Trying to find great candidates to hire is like trying to find a needle in the haystack. There's so many applications and not enough qualified candidates with the right skills and experience. But not with ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you fast. And right now, you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/work. ZipRecruiter's smart technology identifies top talent for you and your roles quickly. Immediately after you post your job on ZipRecruiter, their powerful matching technology starts showing you people that are qualified to work for your organization. You can use ZipRecruiter's invite to apply message to personally reach out to your favorite candidates and encourage them to apply sooner rather than later. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for, the needle in the haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/work. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/work. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marques show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Edward Rahill. But before I bring Edward to the stage, I want to thank one of our amazing sponsors. Let's thank our amazing sponsor, Money Ripples, owned by Mr. Chris Miles. Money Ripples helps you to create a financial base through alternative ways of investing to grow your net worth. We thank Chris Miles and Money Ripples for sponsoring this episode. Now, here he is. Ed, how you doing today, Ed?
Hey, Marcus, doing well. As I said, I'm honored to be on your podcast. I want to thank you for the invite.
I look forward to it, my friend. First question, Ed. What does the word authentic/authenticity mean to you?
To me, it basically defines the event or what you're talking about is realistic, and authentic mean it's true. That it basically this is what you're seeing with this event or the image you have is a true representation of what's going on at that moment.
Love it.
It's not AI produced, it's real.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's about being who you are in the moment and being real to the fact in the moment. And I love what Ed said, because once you learn how to be real and be vulnerable and really live an authentic life, you're in the best position to be living your most fulfilled and prosperous life. So, Ed, tell us a little more about yourself, where you're from, your backstory, and the work you're doing now in your career.
Okay, I was raised in upstate New York in a little town called Gardenville. My primary care was my grandmother, called her mom, had a tremendous influence in my life, and very much, when I'm being honest with myself, I look at, I've been a CEO of a company and all that. I don't think that I would have gotten where I gotten now if it wasn't for her. Because the important thing that happened is she would basically she'd try to show me the life's lessons she learned, the mistakes she made, and the victories she had, to explain to me about how you approach life. One of the things she talked about, and it comes up in over my career, fear is the most devastating emotion a human being can have, because it destroys the fundamentals of what they believe in, and believing in themselves, and believing in the values that they've been carrying up to that point. And she would basically, and I'm 7, 8 years old, and she's telling me this stuff, and I'm going, what are you talking about? But as I got older in life, I understood what she said, the times I've been successful, I have been having a risky situation, whether it's in my business career or in racing. But it was just settling down, reflecting on where you came from, reflecting about the person you really are, and basically saying, I accept failure if it happens, but I'm not going to fail. And so you basically get yourself back in, and you purge the paralyzing emotion that fear can be. And so that's something that was part of my legacy, being brought up. Yeah, went to University of Notre Dame. I was a I know you were a fantastic football player. I was a walk-on for the team and ended up losing my Achilles tendon about 3 months into the season. So
Mm.
that ended mine. But I got a little bit about your background and congratulate you on that. It's a very rare breed that can make it to the NFL. Um, but the story that I'm telling is really the story. The main story is recounting the last great American road race. That's basically from Boston to San Diego, that occurred at the end of the last century, and my experiences running it. The reason why it's called the last great American road race is that this was a situation that I walked into with my partner, had no clue how bad it was going to be.
Mm.
They had we had run it the year before for me to learn, and NBC put a nightly news crew in with the cars at the starting and finishing line, spend 6 or 7 minutes um, putting on their national broadcast. And what happened is that this humiliated many state police across the country because they weren't prepared for it. So when the next time it happened, they had a unified national call out on the cars when they were leaving, tracking them. Um, I have in my book a copy of the all points bulletin set up by the state of New York describing what's happening, the 7 arrests, which I was one. And so it really kind of was a little overwhelming because it wasn't a fun and jockeying thing. You were really up against competition. And this was an international race. The year before, a guy from West Germany who worked for Porsche brought his 911 over and won it. So
Mm.
this was a period in time when the world was a little different. You could never do these races today. You're talking 150, 160 million people versus 360. The traffic on the road right now, I'd say, is about not only quadrupled, maybe even more. So it basically, from a practical point of view and a safety point of view, it becomes something that it wasn't able to do. But the important thing that I connect in the book, Marques, that was the last great American road race, and it had its roots back in 1860 with the Pony Express.
Mm.
They would ride their courses across country as fast as they could to deliver the mail. So it wasn't a race, but that would do it. And this evolved in American culture. It's a part of culture that we don't think about. But after the Civil War, you had tens of thousands of soldiers without anywhere to go, anywhere to do. And what they heard about the Great West Migration, and they would buy a horse, a saddle, maybe a rifle, and they go out and freelance with these ranches that were being built to raise cattle. And they became the cowboys on the cattle drives, which could last 6 weeks, and that was their employment. And so these were a little bit of free spirited nomads, these guys. And the way it was explained to me, that they drop off the cattle in Chicago, they go to a bar, and inevitably somebody would challenge somebody else about who can get back to Abilene, Texas the fastest. And then they go out and they ride 1,000 miles, and it was a race. And this would go on every year. The last great American horse race was in 1893, sponsored by Buffalo Bill Cody, ended in Chicago, and he awarded the winner with a gold-plated Colt 45, and he gave it out. So there's a little bit of history here. In 1905, the cowboy ended because cattle drives were no more. The railroad had taken over, and their need for their services, except for a small group to be permanent employees at ranches, were not needed. And so that evaporated. But in 1905, a bunch of guys at a bar in New York City challenged each other to a race to Portland, Oregon. And that's when the first automobile race started. It took them 44 days. And in the forward of the book, if you can see, I have a picture where I'm standing in front of the two monuments that the state of Oregon erected to honor that is the first event and what they accomplished. The reason why I point that out, 100 years ago, racing across country was not considered anything dangerous. It's considered, wow, I think that's an amazing thing. I want to know more about it. And so it's important that I get that across so that we understand this is a serious event. There's been movies about it, Cannonball Run, everything, which are more spoofs. But this was serious racing that ended in the last part of the last century.
Ed, I'd love to know. I love the story because I hear a lot about, innovation, pivoting, competition, trying to do your best, being your best, being innovative, being forward thinking, being aggressive and trying to, show that you have the ability to do something and have pride and have a sense of accomplishment in your work. And I think that's sensational. What was it, Ed, that got you excited and fired up to actually write the book? Like, where did that passion or that, I call it that inner fire, come from to be able to share this with the world?
I grew up in a car family, and I became intrigued by 24 Hours Le Mans in 1966. That happens to be also the Le Mans that the Ford versus Ferrari is based on. And I had the opportunity working at dealerships to drive a lot of cars. And then I became a little bit of an amateur racer, but my real focus was on getting a career, getting an MBA, getting a job, trying to get stable. But it was always a passion in the back of my mind that I thought would never happen. But what really got me there was I'll tell you right now, I'll take luck over planning. It just so happened the company I was with had had a cousin who was a pro driver who had been invited to this rally, and he said he can't go, and he called me, do you want to do it? And of course, let me tell you, everybody gets a chance once in life. It's the key is to recognize it when. And I said, absolutely, yes, send me the information. And I went through the interview process, the screening process to prove that I had a background that could handle it. And I was accepted into the race. And I ran it twice. But the passion was, I think it comes down to just what I said a moment ago. One of the things my family before me in teaching me about life, everybody gets a break in their lives. The question is, do you recognize it when it's there? And for me, this is where the convergence of my my business career and my love of racing kind of came together, and I just grabbed it. And I went through twice. The first one was a learning curve where it was humiliating. The second one, we ended up winning it. But it was so there's a little bit of approaching something new. I really think what you need to be honest with yourself. What do I got going for me here? Let's find out where it has to be. And once you get that knowledge, you step up to the training and the planning and the work it's necessary to do it. So I basically don't, a kid who's starting out that I'm trying to coach, when they become despondent after, they lost the baseball game or the football game, I said, what did you learn from that? You got to understand, this is to teach you something.
Mhm.
There's honor in defeat if you come away with more knowledge so that you can correct that situation the next time. And I think that's really, really important because we can't let our egos get in the way. You just got to have your mind locked in on what the goal is. Um, so I think that was the emotional driver to go and do this. It was never to be my career because I had a career in business, but it was something I had to do in my life to because I knew this was the last chance I would ever get a shot at this. And it turned out I was prophetic because it was the last one ever run. The Since then, the only cross-country endurance racing going on is in Alaska with the Iditarod. That's the same concept, but you're doing dog sleds instead of cars.
Mhm.
They go days going racing each other. Um, I outline in the book that there have been because what happened with the police enforcement, it really broke down. You basically had tremendous risk of getting arrested, going to jail, and or sued because it became more and more congested on the highways. You just couldn't do it. Since then, there's been a handful, six maybe, people who claim that they, as a lone wolf, would drive from New York to L.A. and that they did better than either Brock Yates and the Cannonball Run or what I did with Tim. But at the end of the day, I just ask them, where's the press at your finish line showing you coming in? And where's the press at the starting line showing that you're taking off? These events were covered nationally and internationally by the press, and it was part of the culture to do that.
Ed, I really like you talking about how important it is to learn lessons from life and how to, take things that happen, and sometimes you don't get what you want in life. Sometimes you're gonna come up short, you're going to struggle, you're gonna face adversity. But it sounds like to me that you're a lot like me. You believe in having that ability, right, Ed, to say, you know what? Although things are challenging, I'm going to push through. And that's my next question is, how do you teach people through the book, or just through your words in general, how to build mental toughness? Because the better mindset you have, the greater the resilience you have to overcome resistance.
I think it's a 60-40 thing. I do believe the individual in their early development years has to develop some kind of a can-do attitude or a willingness to shrug off a loss. See, they have to have a personality, but I think the 60% of them is putting them in situations where they experience they experience losing, and
Mm.
and then basically looking at it as not failure, but we didn't win this one. What am I going to do with the next one? And kind of taking that attitude is I'm not going to take no for an answer. And that's not easy to do because a lot of people have pride that they don't want to be embarrassed. There's nothing embarrassing to me, and I try to explain there's nothing embarrassing about losing to a young kid at 13 years old. There's no, it's not bad. They're not making fun of you because you're going to be a better athlete next week when you play again. And when they start seeing those buildups and they start listening, because you got to prove it to them to it, and you do it by getting them focused on the next event. And all of a sudden, when they start seeing an improvement in themselves and they're starting to get to the point where they're really succeeding, they get it in part of their being of what they are. It's who they are and their character, and they end up, it's an attitude that you have. If you love something in life, you need to pursue it. Um, and basically remember that victory is fleeting, defeat is not permanent, but it's the willingness to carry on that counts in that type of environment. You just pick yourself up and do it again and do it again. And that's if you believe in it. If you're really heart isn't really into it, Marcus, you can't convince anybody to do it. I mean, in the book I had a breakdown after having a horrendous first 1,800 miles. When my partner passed out, wanted to go home. And I had to come to grips with that because I didn't, I had to come to grips how important it is for me to finish this race as opposed to bail out like a lot of people did when the police patrols were just too much. And that was basically coming back to reflecting on my youth when I first learned about perseverance and I first learned about what you can gain from not giving up. It's tough. And I think it's got to start young, Marcus. I think you got to get them. You got to get a boy. I have daughters too, but I think you got to get a boy started with a mental attitude pre-puberty, and make sure you're on him during puberty, so he starts. Because he's developing his character, his persona, and an image in himself who he is. And if he can kind of point to pride that I fell off this mountain 3 times and the 4th time I did
Ed, fantastic interview. How can people connect
Yeah.
with you if they want to buy the book? Where can they go? How can our audience get in touch with you and or support your awesome
God
book
bless you.
project?
Okay, on Amazon.com, you can buy the book, there under 1 Mile at a Time, Edward Rahill. It's also available at your local bookstore. They'd have to order or not. What is happening, and I have a web page that's edwardrahill.com, EDWARDRAHILL.com. I do want to let you know that I'm relaunching a second edition of this, which is going to include the ability to get an audiobook, you know, which I think is important to have. And so we're going to have a complete Kindle. It's going to be a complete platform for people so that they can choose how they want to listen to it. But this is a true story. You know, um, the speeds that I reached at night from Illinois to Texas Panhandle averaged between 129 to 130 miles per hour for just about 7 hours, and that's having to drive through Oklahoma City and things like that. And that was my breakthrough, is when I gave up being afraid and I just wanted to do what I could. And the reason I knew we had lost the race, but I remember saying to myself, 1 mile at a time. That's how the name of the book. I had 2,000 miles to go. And basically my attitude was one moment at a time, one car at a time, 1 mile at a time. And that's how we're going to drive this race. You're not going to think about it. And ended up winning by 10 minutes, which was a shock to us because both Tim and I never thought we were the winners when we drove in. So it was a
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the type of story that I love because what Ed just said in that last segment is that all you can do is 1 mile at a time, one action step at a time, one thing at a time. And I tell all the time, when you get overwhelmed, stop, take a moment and see you can only do one thing at a time and then knock things off the list, check by check by check. And that's exactly what it's all about. And again, fantastic interview with Ed Rahill. Please go to his website. We'll have the information in the show notes. Support him and pick up his book. Again, great segment, great last segment, right, Ed? 1 mile at
thank
a
you.
time. And that's
Yep.
all you can do in life. 1 mile at a time, one thing at a time, one action step at a time.
It's
We
how you
want
get
to
through something that seems unbearable, something that seems undoable. You get through it 1 mile at a time.
That's all you can do. And ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank our amazing sponsor, Mr. Chris Smiles, for sponsoring this episode. And the authentic tip of this great interview, I'm going to say it just like Ed said it, 1 mile at a time.
Thank you.
Never get discouraged. Never try to do more than you can do. Just break it down into action steps and get things done one thing at a time, one action step at a time, 1 mile at a time.
I know, buddy.
My
Marques,
name is
thank you.
My pleasure. My name is Marques Ogden. I am the host of the Get Authentic with Marques show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.